Okay, everybody, this is week 6 and we're talking about environment variables. I feel like some of the Linux instruction I found out on YouTube was pretty good, so I'm not going to cover that in too much depth here today. However, I don't think that your Windows instruction was all that good. First of all, I don't think it does a good job of showing you how to actually get to the place where you can change environment variables and how it can be done from the command line interface as well as from the GUI. Where I'll admit it always makes more sense to set these environment variables in the GUI, it's also important to know how to do it in the command line interface. When you set environment variables or shell variables in the GUI, it's available every time you start up a new command prompt. So I do like doing it this way better. So that's what I'll show you right now. So how I do it is I either click here, I type control panel, or I go here to the control panel, and that's a good start for it. So let's try that initially. I'll go to the control panel. It showed up on my other monitor. So then you could come here to control panel. Let's say you view it as category. We'll go with that. So we click on system, and then we click on system again. There's several ways to do it, but that's one way. So now I click on advanced settings, and you have seen this in a couple of the other videos here. So just for confusion, I'm going to get rid of that. And you've seen this environment variables area. So here I have a couple of different variables set. This path variable must have been installed by a specific program. I did not put that there. So it's always going to take this system path variable here. OneDrive must have installed this folder right here. So these are specific user variables that are available. These are more system-oriented variables. For example, I'm using a Windows NT based operating system. I'm using Windows 10, so that's where it gets that. My computer does have 4 processors or 4 cores. That's not something that I have any control over unless I actually add a different processor to this machine or use a different machine. It's an AMD processor architecture, so these are things that cannot change, and they're set by the system here. So this also has a separate temp directory mapped from it, so we'll take a look at some of this stuff as well. But what your system variables are, where I am able to add them, a lot of these are going to be set in stone and will adjust back. So that being said, I'm going to create a new user variable because that's what you're going to do most of the time. So we'll call this variable, we'll call it CIS class. And the environment variable we will use is 170. So it gives you the option to browse for a specific file or directory, because a lot of paths are used with environment variables, as you've seen. But for this one, we're just going to put in a value as the example. So we'll do CIS class 170. All right, very good. And we'll say OK. And we'll say OK again. So now I'm going to fire up a command prompt. And I ran it as the administrator. I've had some questions on that on the last assignment, but I would run it as the administrator. It keeps you out of trouble. When you do that, it's going to start you off in the Windows System 32 directory every time. So let's change back to our users folder. All right, thank you very much. I'm going to continue in a minute. All right, so now we're back at the users prompt. So let's go into your own folder. It won't be Glenn for you. It'll be something else. But now let's take a look around at some of our path settings and what have you. So if we just type path, it'll give us the path and everything we have mapped on our machines. So here, if we want this path variable, gets its information from the Windows System advanced settings that we were just in. So let's discuss how we'd want to add something to the path statement. And this is only going to be available while I'm in this command prompt, or if I shell any other command prompts from here. So what you would do is you type set path equals, so to call any environment variable in Windows, it's going to be percent, the name, and then percent again. In Windows, the path is separated by a semicolon, unlike Linux. So if we put a semicolon there, so we're going to so by doing this, we're going to set the path and we're going to recreate this entire path string here. And then let's say we add, and I don't know if this path exists or not, but I'm just going to put it in here to show you that it's got a little more there to it. So let's just say users Glenn desktop. So that's now added to the path. So if I hit enter, it accepted the command. I type path again, and you can see that my desktop folder has been added here. So that's how you could do it. You could also set that specific command. We recently created the CIS info folder. So if we do percent CIS info, I think that's what I called it. I did not. Oh, whoops, I typed it wrong. I guess that's not what I called it. So let's see what I called it again real quick here. We're going to go into System and Security. We're going to go to System, Advanced Settings, Environment Variables, and I called it CIS Class. Okay, so that's why it didn't work. So that's good that it failed, though. It gives you a chance to see what it's actually doing. So CIS Class, and it brings back the 170. So I can use this environment variable to call different things. So if I wanted to echo a command that made a little bit more sense, I could say echo this class is CIS, no space because I'm going to continue here, and then I put percent CIS class. Where's the percent sign? There it is. It'll come back and say CIS 170. Looks like I don't need the percent sign there. I need the percent sign here. Let's try that. That's better. So this class is CIS 170, and the quotes are correct now. So if I wanted to do that, I could also redirect that to file1.txt, and that's basically the idea of how you could use an environment variable there. We did have the temp variable that you saw that was set up from the GUI, from the control panel. So there was the temp variable. So if I wanted to cd percent temp percent, it's going to put me in my temp folder that it had predetermined. And in one of the previous Windows videos, it did have a command that showed you all of the different environment variables. I believe if you type env here or just set here, you can get a lot of these variables. So you type set and you get a lot of different information. So obviously I named my computer Power G Master, and what have you here. So these variables are system level variables, and they're all available to you as well. So if I wanted to export the processor identifier here, I could echo. I'm running out of time here. I'm just going to type processor because the clock is running. I must have typed that wrong. Processor level. Let's try that. It's processor level. So that gives you an idea of how environment variables are used within the system. It's not a difficult concept, and with Linux it's very simple. As we discussed, I'm not going to fire up a Unix shell right now, but an environment variable starts with a $sign and then the variable name. In Linux, when you call it, in Windows, it's going to be percent variable name. So very similar, their usage is very similar, and however, I do believe it was explained pretty well on those Linux videos. I did not feel the same way about the Windows videos. So hopefully that makes a little bit of sense to you, and it'll give you the ability to go ahead and proceed with your homework assignments. So that being said, Good luck and have a good week. Thank you.